Bitcoin has been running a historic bull run since the beginning of October 2020. In just a few weeks, the Bitcoin price has risen from $10,500 to nearly $35,000. This bull run has been driven by institutional investors, large companies such as MicroStrategy, or the arrival of PayPal into the Bitcoin world. As the Bitcoin price continued to rise, many voices were raised to announce the imminent start of a major correction. These Bitcoin bears base their prediction on their experience in the Bitcoin world, but also by keeping in memory this famous from Mark Twain. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Since history often rhymes, these Bitcoin bears thought that the Bitcoin price was going to do what it had done every time we had experienced such an intense bull run, a major pullback from 30 to 40%. Every time the Bitcoin price dropped rapidly by more than 5%, the Bitcoin bears have announced that the bull run was over. This has happened several times since the beginning of October 2020. The most recent was yesterday. While Bitcoin price started the year with a new all-time high, ATH, on January 3, 2021, with a price of $34,800, a significant drop in its price occurred on January 4, 2021. In a few hours, the Bitcoin price lost minus 17% from $34,500 to $28,700. The Bitcoin bears, but also the opponents of Bitcoin, were just waiting for this to come out of the woodwork. Soon we saw all kinds of tweets from people saying that Bitcoin was too volatile, or that Bitcoin price is manipulated. It seems that Nouriel Roubini had been preparing his tweet for a long time. Throughout the Bitcoin bull run, Roubini must have been impatient to get his name back in the news by tapping on Bitcoin. As always with Bitcoin opponents, Roubini chose the easy way out. Indeed, he took up the same totally false arguments that had always been used against Bitcoin. According to Roubini, Bitcoin has zero intrinsic value or fundamental value. Roubini adds that Bitcoin is totally manipulated via fiat tether daily issuance, massive pump and dump schemes and whales. I told you Roubini was in great shape for the beginning of 2021. Unfortunately for Roubini, Bitcoin price quickly rebounded to be back above $30,000 as soon as the market opened in the United States. The drop in the Bitcoin price was due to selling pressure from Asia. We are currently witnessing a real battle between American users willing to buy all the dips in the Bitcoin world, and Asian users who are putting significant selling pressure. At the moment, it seems that buying pressure is winning, as the Bitcoin price has just gone back above $32,000. The Bitcoin price is $32,448 at the time of writing. Roubini will therefore have to wait a little longer before claiming victory. The fact that he was right once in his life regarding the subprime crisis in 2008 does not allow him to give an informed opinion on Bitcoin, which is a disruptive technology that he doesn't understand. With Bitcoin, Roubini clearly reaches his level of incompetence. No need to blame him, it is the same thing with a whole bunch of economists who still don't understand how Bitcoin works. Thus, they are unable to understand why even above $30,000, Bitcoin is the most undervalued asset in the world in terms of its fundamentals. In time, they will be forced to bow to Bitcoin, whose success is inevitable. Bitcoin's current bull run is not yet over, no matter what the Bitcoin bears may think. To help you understand what I am basing this on, I'm going to show you 3 metrics that you can easily follow. By looking carefully at these metrics, you can get a better idea of whether or not a major Bitcoin correction is imminent. 1. Miner outflows. As you probably know, every time a miner in the Bitcoin network correctly adds a new block to the Bitcoin blockchain, he gets the BTC reward associated with this block. Currently, the reward is 6.25 BTC per block mined correctly. Miners are therefore incentivized to come and secure the Bitcoin network via this reward, to which you can add the transaction fees. Nevertheless, the reward remains the most important part of the profits generated by the miners. A good way to find out what miners think about the evolution of Bitcoin price is to see what they do with the BTC they get. When Bitcoin miners start selling BTC en masse, you can infer that they think the Bitcoin price will fall in the short term. When Bitcoin miners choose to keep their BTC, you can infer that they are betting on the price of Bitcoin going up. Miners do not believe that a major correction is imminent. They may be wrong, of course, but generally, they are heading in the right direction. So this is something you need to watch carefully. 2. The activity of Bitcoin whales. Bitcoin whales are persons or entities with addresses on the network with a very large amount of BTC. The higher the amount of BTC available, the more powerful the whale is, obviously. It is always interesting to observe the transactions carried out by the whales. Focusing on whales with at least 10,000 BTC often gives relevant results on the trend that Bitcoin is expected to follow in the short term. The current situation clearly shows us that the whales continue to support this bull run. It has room to go even higher as long as the $28.5 thousand is held for the Bitcoin price. This is in fact what is happening. Indeed, since I started writing this article, the price of Bitcoin has risen significantly to above $34,000. A new ATH above $35,000 may even have been beaten. 3. Funding rates. You probably don't know what the funding rate is. Funding rates are periodic payments either to traders that are long or short based on the difference between perpetual contract markets and spot prices. So, depending on open positions, traders will either pay or receive funding. The sudden drop in the funding rate on major exchanges during yesterday morning's price drop is proof that derivatives played a large role in this price movement. Nevertheless, the situation quickly returned to normal, indicating that a broader correction was not yet in the cards. If the corrections are currently being driven by derivatives, this is not unusual. This is important for resetting funding and allowing for healthy growth. So it is a situation that is good for the current bull run to continue to drive the price of Bitcoin even higher. Final thoughts. Contrary to what all the Bitcoin bears have been announcing for several days or even weeks for some, this bull run is still far from over. Bitcoin price can still go much higher in the short term. If the $35,000 price were to be exceeded in the coming days, this bull run could quickly rise to $40,000. This would be a new historical barrier that Bitcoin could cross. No wonder when you realize how Bitcoin remains undervalued relative to its incredible fundamentals. Bitcoin is attacking August 2020 in the best possible way. After several weeks of waiting after its third Bitcoin halving, the Bitcoin price has finally decided to make an important move at the very end of July 2020. Since the halving, Bitcoin has been trading in an increasingly restricted range. Throughout July, this range had even narrowed to $9,000, $9,400. And then within 48 hours, everything changed. Between July 26th and 28th, the Bitcoin price rose by almost 20%. Bitcoin went from $9,600 to $11,000. During this upward movement, Bitcoin broke several important resistances, the first one at $9,900. The second was a much older resistance at $10,500. Bitcoin had been rejected several times from this resistance since the beginning of 2020. Once this $10,500 resistance was broken, Bitcoin successfully broke the $11,000 mark, a price that had not been reached since August 2019. Within 48 hours, sentiment in the market went from fear to extreme greed. The $11,400 was reached in the aftermath, and many saw Bitcoin on its way to start its famous bull run. And then, the Bitcoin price finally stabilized all week around $11,000. The market needed to stall after the sharp rise it had just experienced. Those who understood that Bitcoin's targets are much higher than the $11,000 price could take a step back. There are more and more signals suggesting the start of the Bitcoin bull run. By seeing the bigger picture, we can see that there are more and more bullish signals for Bitcoin. A monthly close price above $11,000 for July 2020, that had not been seen since June 2019 when the Bitcoin price had approached $14,000. The number of days where hodling Bitcoin has been a profitable strategy now exceeds 98%. 93% of all addresses that own Bitcoin are now in profits. More than 63% of the total number of Bitcoins in circulation has not moved for at least 1 year, implying that we are in a phase of big accumulation. We could be in this phase, which would imply that we would be at the beginning of a great bull run for Bitcoin. In addition to these technical elements, there is much major news that has been added in the last few weeks. Grayscale Investments has accumulated a huge amount of Bitcoin for its clients who are mainly institutional players. Historical opponents of Bitcoin are coming to the fore. Bitcoin is here to stay. PayPal will soon offer to buy/sell Bitcoin to its 325 million users. Visa working with Coinbase to provide a bridge between digital currencies and our existing global network of 61 million merchants. The U.S. banking regulator has just authorized U.S. banks to hold Bitcoin for its customers. While I remain convinced that the banks cannot be part of the solution because they are at the heart of the problem with the current system, this announcement is extremely bullish for Bitcoin. A U.S. federal court recently ruled that Bitcoin is a form of money under the Washington, D.C. Money Transmitters Act, MTA. All this pleads in favor of the start of the famous bull run. Bitcoin price has just filled the oldest CME gap still open, which was at $11,700. Bitcoin price reached $11,970 before being strongly rejected towards $11,000. At the time of writing, the Bitcoin price has again stabilized around $11,000, waiting for a move up to $12,000, or a move down. Bitcoin price has just filled the oldest CME gap still open, which was at $11,700. Bitcoin price reached $11,970 before being strongly rejected towards $11,000. At the time of writing, the Bitcoin price has again stabilized around $11,000, waiting for a move up to $12,000, or a move down. A CME gap remains open at $9,600. Indeed, there is still a CME gap at $9,600 which formed last weekend when Bitcoin price rose sharply. While some may not believe in the importance of these CME gaps, it must be admitted that they are filled in more than 95% of the cases. A correction to $9,600 is therefore a credible assumption. Besides, there has been a noticeable increase in the sending of Bitcoins to trading platforms by Bitcoin miners over the last few days. This often indicates that miners may be willing to sell their Bitcoins to take advantage of a spike in its price. Such a massive selling could lead to a correction in the Bitcoin price with a return to the $9,600 level. The next few days will, therefore, be extremely interesting to follow for the Bitcoin price. I think that the long-awaited bull run will only start after a correction and a return to $9,000. I could be wrong, and that would be so much the better, but in any case, you have to be extremely careful not to give in to the FOMO feeling that some people are trying to instill in the Bitcoin market. Bitcoin's goals are extremely high for the future, and you have to keep your emotions under control because the hardest part will start in the coming months when the Bitcoin price will start to climb towards $50,000, and even more after that.